we're looking at homemade Concord wine. Years ago, an old Italian taught me how to make wine. In this video, I'm going to go through all the details that he taught me. Now, until I understood the concepts of how this works, I could only make wine vinegar. With these techniques, you'll be able to have old Italian wine. Now, talking to an old Italian compared to a modern technique, these are two totally different things. And I think when we're done, you're gonna agree that the old way is a good way. Now, if you're making grape jelly, you can cook the grapes. But if you're making Italian wine, no way. Now here we're making homemade jelly. But if you're making homemade wine, you just crush the grapes and put them in. Now here's a disclaimer. My old Italian friend would not have used milk jugs. An oak barrel is the only way. Now for years I've been doing it without an oak barrel. But as he passed on these tricks to me, he insisted that an oak barrel was absolutely necessary. And someday I would like to try it in an oak barrel. As I made this wine for years, as good as it is, I know it would be better in an oak barrel. Okay, here's the first important tip. Anything that touches the wine needs to be perfectly clean. A little bit of bleach is a necessity. Not in the wine, but to clean with. And a water trap at the top is absolutely necessary. Now without the bleach and these water traps, you will make wine vinegar. If there's any yeast from the outside air that gets in, you'll have vinegar. Now some of this grape mash has been cooked. You'll just want to make sure that it's nice and cool, and you've got to add natural grapes that have not been cooked into the mash. The uncooked grapes are where the enzymes come from. The best wine you're going to get is pure juice without any water added. When you add some water, this is called the second pressing. So yes, you can make wine twice with the same grapes, but it's not going to be near as good as the pure juice. Now before you put your air traps in, you want to make sure it's filled all the way to the top, then top it off with water. Now is the slow process. See those bubbles coming up? You're going to see bubbles come up for about 2 weeks. This process is what he called let it work. Now after everything is done working, we're going to strain out all the mash and get the juice into the bottom of another container. Then filter it again with a paper filter. Then take that out and put it into some clean bottles. The stuff I'm pouring in right now is the real juice. This is the first pressing and the best. The bottle right next to it, that's the second pressing, and you can see how light it is. Now the second pressing's pretty good, but don't drink them right next to the good stuff. Now if you've had good old Italian wine, you know this stuff isn't something you just go out and buy. Now you can use this technique with all kinds of different grapes. These are Concord grapes. These are really good for jelly, but they're also really good for wine. My Italian friend had an exact mixture of Catawba, Niagara. I use whatever grapes I've got. I do want to start growing the Catawba, the Niagara. Everybody's got their favorites, and that's what makes the world go round. As I drop a few grapes, the rooster's getting into the act. Those chickens love these grapes. Now this year we have plenty of grapes for grape jelly and for wine. And we can use some of the byproduct from the grape jelly in the wine. But of course, each batch of wine needs some fresh grapes. Whether you're making wine or jelly, you want to take the stems off and give them a good rinsing. And you want to get rid of all the green grapes. They're kind of sour. And if you want to make a party out of it, make a party out of it. Now to make the wine, you want to smash them up. You can use your hands, you can use a tool. But if you're making wine, don't cook them. That'll kill the yeast in the grape. Now there's plenty of techniques that tell you to go ahead and cook the grape and kill all the yeast and then add it in later. But if you want to do it the old Italian way, you want to use the grapes themselves because that's the natural way to get the yeast. Now you can see there's a lot of juice in here, and those green grapes, that's actually with the skin off of them. They're not actually green grapes. Now there's definitely time involved with this stuff. Now this grape juice is really good by itself. You could make grape jelly, you could make wine, you could drink it just the way it is. If you're gonna make the wine, you've gotta have the water trap and you've gotta have the bleach. I've tried it without the P-trap and I've tried it without the bleach, and it does not work unless you have these two things. Take your time and get everything clean. If it did turn to vinegar, you could still use it for cooking. But there's no reason to make vinegar when you can make wine. Because you could still cook with wine instead of vinegar, but you really can't drink vinegar. I let this bleach really soak in for about 10 minutes. Some of this we're just gonna put into bottles and then add in a little bit of water. Just make sure you have fresh grapes in there to start that culture going. You want the seeds, the skin, the juice, everything. You can put it in with a spoon, you can put it in with your hand. The funnel's a little rough. Now I've used milk jugs, I've used spackle buckets. I've used just about everything except an oak barrel. Well, let's talk about this oak barrel. My friend would always talk about putting the oak barrel out a couple weeks before you wanted to use it. You fill it up with water, and eventually the leaking will go away. As the wood swells, the leaks stop. Then you can make your wine. Now we're gonna add in some of those fresh grapes. This will get that culture going. If you wanted, you could just put the grapes in just like this, fill up the whole container. You'd want to take a stick and just stir it up really good and break up those grapes. Well, everything's all cleaned up and ready to let it start working. Nothing like homemade Concord jelly, wine, grape juice, good stuff. Now, after watching this stuff work for about 2 weeks, let's go ahead and try it. Now you can see there's a lot of liquid that boiled off. Not boiled off from the heat, boiled off from bubbling, from making wine, from working. Now when I pour this off to taste it, there's gonna be a little bit of sediment in there. Now you wouldn't serve this to guests, but I'm gonna take a sip. Now this is some of the second pressing, not the first, but not bad. Now it's time to filter it off. Now this will get the big stuff out, but to get the little stuff out, this is a process. Now just let this drain and get as much of the liquid out as you can. Now we'll pour it into this other container and then we'll run it through again with a paper filter. You'll get a lot more out, but you're still not gonna get it all out. You can see there's a lot of sediment in there. Now with a funnel, we can pour it into some clean jars. Now as the wine sits, that sediment is gonna go right to the bottom. This stuff sure looks good. It's okay to drink right now, but it'll be good to drink later too. Now I'll fill it all the way to the top and put the water trap on there. That way if it needs to work a little bit more, it has the opportunity to. We're definitely to the next level though. Now I'm eager to try the first pressing. The wine that's made with the pure juice. Okay, so we'll get the pulp out it and give it a try. You can see how red this is compared to the other ones. First, I'll make sure I've got enough to fill the bottle, then I'll pour a glass. Now, every time you pour, you want to pour slow to keep the sediment in the bottom. When you start to see the sediment, back off. Now, the sediment's not going to hurt you, it just doesn't look as good. Here we go, let's give it a try. 2 weeks of watching it. Yep, it was worth it. So it's good to go right now, or you can just keep working on getting those solids out of there. Basically, you pour it, let it settle, pour it, let it settle. After you work with it, eventually you'll have a nice bottle without those solids in there. You can see the solids starting to come up, and we're gonna back off now. So that's basically it. There's an art to it, and if you've got other techniques, please leave them in the comments down below. There's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. I was really glad to have all this information shared with me from my old Italian neighbor. He also taught me how to play guitar, well, kinda. Well, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.